They branded me like cattle. The hiss came first, sharp, alive, and hungry. Then the pain tore through me, bright and blinding as the iron pressed into my thigh. The smell rose instantly, heavy and metallic, clinging to my tongue, the stench of my own burning flesh. I tried to pull away, but two men pinned me, their fingers digging so deep into my arms, I could feel the pulse of their blood against mine. Around us, the brothel roared with drunken delight. Oil lamps swayed, their light throwing shadows of groping hands across the walls. A lyre played somewhere in the corner, its cheerful notes twisting into something obscene against the chorus of male laughter. Coins clinked on the floor as wagers were shouted. How long before I broke? How much for my first night? The iron lifted, leaving its shape carved into my skin, an open wound that would never fade. My legs trembled, but I stayed standing, refusing to fall for their amusement. In that moment, I stopped being a person. I was marked, owned, and already half forgotten. Before Athens, before the red doors and the smell of oil lamps, there was a small village in Thessaly where the air was clean and the nights were quiet. My earliest memories are of my mother's hands, rough from the fields, tucking my hair behind my ears as she hummed songs she claimed her mother had sung to her. My father's voice still lingers in my mind, deep and warm, even though he died when I was 9, taken by a fever that burned through him in days. We survived the first year without him. We even laughed sometimes. But when the rains failed and the fields cracked under the summer sun, hunger came creeping into our home. My mother borrowed from the moneylender, coins with interest sharp as teeth. By the second year of poor harvests, the debt had swollen beyond hope. The moneylender came again, his smile as false as the gold on his belt. He offered a solution. If I went to the city to work, the debt would shrink. He promised I'd serve in a fine household, wear clean clothes, and eat well. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she signed the agreement. I wanted to believe her choice would save us both. The morning I left, the village seemed quieter than usual. Neighbors avoided my gaze. One old woman caught my hand and whispered, "Don't trust the city. It swallows girls whole." I didn't understand her then. The cart that took me away smelled of straw and iron. My mother's figure grew smaller with each turn in the road until she was just a shape against the fields. I pressed my face into my knees, telling myself I was going to be a servant. But deep down, a shadow had already begun to spread inside me. The cart that carried me into Athens rattled over cobblestones, its wheels whining like they resented the weight. 4 of us sat inside, 2 younger than me, one with a swollen eye that never opened, and another who stared at the floor so long, I wondered if she even breathed. The air inside was thick with fear, and underneath it, the sour stench of sweat and unwashed skin. Athens greeted us with noise and heat. Vendors shouted over each other in the markets, roasting meat hissed on open fires, and sewage trickled between the stones under our feet. I caught glimpses of marble columns and brightly painted statues, but we never stopped to look. The driver turned down a narrower street where the air grew heavier, carrying the smell of wine, incense, and something sharper, like blood left too long in the sun. That's where I saw it. The brothel's door was painted a deep, glossy red, the wood smoothed by countless hands. Men lounged outside, their eyes sweeping over us like they were choosing cuts of meat. We were dragged inside, past the main hall, where men reclined on couches, cups in hand. Music from a lyre tangled with drunken laughter. The walls were close here, the ceiling low, and the light from the oil lamps threw long, trembling shadows. The owner, a man with a belly like a wine barrel, looked us over the way a farmer might inspect new livestock. That's when I learned about the welcome. They called it tradition, but it was nothing more than a performance designed to break us. My turn came second. 2 men gripped my arms and dragged me to the center of the room. The iron was already glowing in the brazier, its tip the color of molten gold. I could feel its heat from several steps away. The moment it touched my thigh, pain tore through me so sharp my vision went white. I bit down until blood filled my mouth, refusing to give them the scream they craved. The crowd roared anyway. Coins hit the floor. Men shouted wagers, and someone yelled 10 times the price for her first night. When they were done, they shoved me toward a curtained corner, the place that would be mine. It wasn't a room, not even close. Just a stained mat on the floor, separated from the next space by a sheet so thin I could see every movement on the other side. Privacy was an illusion here. Every cry, every grunt, every muffled sob bled through the air like smoke. The rules came next. Barked in a voice that brooked no argument. You work until you collapse. You do not refuse anyone. You smile even when you bleed. That night, my first customer paid extra for cruelty. He pressed the rim of a bronze cup into my mouth until my lip split, then poured wine over the wound like it was some kind of ritual. The salt of my own blood mixed with the sweetness of the drink, a taste I can never forget. I learned quickly that pain had its own economy here. The more it was inflicted, the more they would pay. The owner divided us into categories: foreign women, fighters, the unbroken. Each came with a different price, a different kind of buyer. And for those buyers, violence wasn't an accident. It was the point. That first night, as I lay on my mat with the curtain swaying in the draft, I listened to the rhythm of suffering around me. It was almost like music, rising and falling, unpredictable yet constant. Somewhere in that noise, I understood. In this place, your body wasn't yours, and survival wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about learning how much you could spend before it killed you. It began with the drums. Low, steady, and relentless, their sound rolled through the narrow streets like an approaching storm. The Dionia festival had arrived, a week when Athens drowned itself in wine, theater, and frenzy. For men, it was celebration. For women like me, it was a sentence. We were ordered to wash, paint our faces, and dress in silk brighter than anything we'd worn before. The fabrics shimmered in the lamplight, hiding the bruises beneath. Some of the girls whispered to each other, hoping for a kind group. I didn't waste my breath. The temple courtyard was already overflowing when we arrived. Torches burned high, their flames writhing in the wind, and the air was thick with incense and the musk of too many bodies pressed close. Men stood in clusters, cups of wine in hand, their eyes glassy with drink and expectation. The priests raised their arms, blessing the crowd, speaking of divine pleasures and honoring the god. I tasted bile in my mouth. When my turn came, I was thrown into the waiting arms of 5 men. The first gripped my hair, forcing me to stare at the painted face of Dionysus leering from the altar. The second yanked me to my knees. Laughter swelled around us, tangled with the pounding drums. Somewhere nearby, a woman screamed, high and sharp, before being swallowed by the noise. They made wagers, not about whether I would fight, but about how long I would last before I stopped moving. One man poured wine down my throat until it spilled over my chin and onto my chest. Another twisted my arm until I felt the wet pop of my shoulder giving way. I gasped for air, but the only mercy they offered was another slap of laughter. The world blurred into flashes, torchlight on bronze goblets, the weight of bodies pressing me into the stone, the metallic taste of blood. When it was finally over, I couldn't feel my legs. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. My ears rang with the ghost of their cheering. They dragged me back toward the brothel, my feet stumbling over the uneven stones. I passed the body of a woman I knew, her face turned toward the sky, eyes wide and unseeing. Her hair was fanned out like a halo, but there was nothing holy about the way her neck was bent. Once I had tried to escape into a temple, believing the gods might protect me. I'd begged the priest for sanctuary, my knees bruised from the marble floor. He had smiled, taken a coin from my owner, and handed me back like a borrowed cup returned to its shelf. That day, I learned that even the gods had a price. As the drums faded behind me and the wine soured in my stomach, I stopped asking for miracles. The city had no place for prayers from women like me. That was the night I stopped believing in salvation. I survived the festival, but survival here is only another word for waiting to die. The days that followed blurred together. Faces, hands, the same mat on the same cold floor. My shoulder never healed right. On damp nights, the pain spread down my arm until I couldn't hold a cup. No one cared, as long as I could still work. The women I knew vanished one by one. Some were carried out in the dead of night, their bodies wrapped in rough cloth. Others simply disappeared. Their spaces filled by new girls with wide, frightened eyes. No one asked where they went. Asking meant you cared, and caring was dangerous. I learned the rhythms of this place, the way the air changed when a violent man entered, the moments when the owner's gaze softened toward his favorites, the tricks to hide a limp or a bruise. Smiles became my armor. I learned to show my teeth even when my mouth was full of blood. Athens liked to call itself the cradle of democracy, but for women like me, that cradle had no bottom. We were the invisible foundation, the unacknowledged fuel that kept its marble temples shining and its theaters full. Every coin spent on art, politics, or philosophy had passed through hands stained with the suffering of the nameless. I thought once that being freed might change everything. But I'd seen freed women too, still watched, still whispered about, still barred from anything resembling respect. In Athens, your past followed you like a shadow, no matter how far you tried to run. When the time came for me, they didn't bother with ceremony. I was carried beyond the city walls and left in a shallow ditch among broken pottery and old bones. The sun was setting, bleeding red across the hills, and the air smelled faintly of rosemary from the scrub nearby. I remember thinking that it was the first truly quiet moment I'd had in years. Maybe no one will remember my name. Maybe history will keep its eyes closed. But if these words survive, if my voice can travel farther than my body, then I have not been erased entirely. Because I remember. And now, so do you.